And away we go. So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you happen to be in the world today. Welcome, one and all, to Coffee Talk. It is time once again for Coffee Talk Live, where we will be having some discussion about what is going on in the world today. We'll take a look at some clips from the news and share a little bit of dialogue with those of you who are able to join us for the live portion. And if you happen to be listening anywhere else and you wanted to join the live portion, you can join us Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on YouTube, on Coffee Talk and Prepper University. That's at Coffee Talk Live and at Prepper University if you're looking for it on YouTube. You can find us on X at Coffee Talk Chat and fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta as we get ready to jump off here. And as always, I do try to read through as many of the comments as is reasonable. And I'll say hello to some of the people that have chosen to say hello in the live portion here. See, Jeff is with us today, as well as Helter, Dragon, Monkey, Sven, David, Tuck, and Country Living. Says the weather is doing good in Minnesota today. That's good. It's nice out here. Again, in Georgia. Not sure what the current temperature is, though. I think it's about 75 degrees, if I remember correctly. So we get ready to jump off here. Of course, you saw the thumbnail, and I'm sure you all know they did the Met Gala. And I did want to talk about that a little bit. But of course, first, the top news, the breaking news, is the Prime Minister, the newly installed Prime Minister of Canada, coming to the United States. He talked a lot of shit. On his way in. About how I'm not going to bow to America, even though he's lived here for years and worked here for years. You love Canada so much, stay your ass up there. Puck has joined us here today. Again, that reminds me of Mike Myers on Saturday Night Live just recently, a few weeks ago, at the end, opening up his jacket and had a T-shirt on that said, "Canada is not for sale." Well, you sold yourself out of Canada. You left Canada in the 80s and you've never been back, Mike Myers. Never. So suck it. Anyways, Carney is on his way to the White House. And of course, or is at the White House. He's sitting with the president right now. Sven says the law was laid out for the prime minister. Yeah, he was installed. Carney is. I don't see him honestly being any better than Trudeau was. Trudeau has been ruining, and his ilk have been ruining Canada for the last decade. And this can't be much better. Can't be much better coming up here. USA Today article, and it starts out: Trump and Carney debate annexing Canada as 51st state in White House visit. Live updates. I seriously doubt that's happening unless Carney's making it an issue, because once again, if you go back and you watch the original film footage of when Trump said that, that is obviously sarcasm. He said it as satire. You can tell by his tone of voice and by his mannerisms. It was a joke. Well, we may as well make Canada the 51st state. They'd be better off if we did it. And he's just being a smartass. That's Trump's demeanor. He does stuff like that all the time. Press is taking it dead serious, like he really means it, like troops are on the way to the border. It's insane. I see JJ has joined us, as well as Raccoon. And Bob is here. He says Carney was governor of the Bank of England, for a while. That's correct. That is correct. So USA Today implying that we're actually really considering making Canada the 51st state. Sure. And Trump's going to be the Pope too, because he joked about that also. That was more of his brand of humor. He's not actually going to try to be Pope. You see what I'm saying? That's just Trump's offbeat brand of humor. So here we go. Fireworks lit up disputes about President Trump's priorities in a series of high-stakes meetings about foreign affairs and domestic spending. Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney told Trump in the Oval Office on May 6th that his country is not for sale. Sure. Despite the president's repeated proposals to annex the northern neighbor as a 51st state, the two met to discuss tariffs and border security, although Trump said he didn't expect to change his import duties. And again, this is USA Today pandering to that concept that he's had repeated proposals. He has not made repeated proposals. Nothing's been written up. He hasn't contacted his lawyers. He's not been in talks with the prime minister. He made a joke. He made a couple of jokes about it, actually. That doesn't mean that's going to happen. It said sparks flew on Capitol Hill too as the House Appropriations Committee began reviewing Trump's budget blueprint for the year starting October 1st. Trump would like to eliminate the Federal Emergency Management Agency and simply provide disaster grants to the states, which would be cheaper and more efficient. So I agree with that. Her confirmation, let me see. Her confirmation of Democratic suspicions came after Representative Rosa DeLauro, Democrat Connecticut, said disasters happen everywhere and argued the federal government needs to respond. Well, they would by funding relief efforts rather than forcing states to wait for FEMA to show up. Is this all going to be whining on about other things that he's doing? Yeah, it looks like it. They're barely talking about his conversation with the current prime minister, but they really can't talk about it because they don't know yet. They're in meetings right now, if I remember. Sven says bigots have no sense of humor. The left can't understand a joke. It sure seems that way. They know. The media knows that was humor. They know. And like I said, you could find the old video clip of when he first said it, and you can tell by his tone. It's like he's a stand-up comic at that moment. He knows what he's saying. He knows what he's saying. JJ said that's because the press and possibly Carney don't understand sarcasm and have no sense of humor. But I think they do know. I think they do know, but they're playing it up. They're playing it up. The media knows exactly what was meant by his statement. And they want to, and I don't know which is worse. The fact that they act like it's the truth or the fact that there are people who believe it. I don't know which is more insulting as a human being. And Monkey says if Trump was serious about the state commitment, the PM would not be in D.C. right now. No, he wouldn't have come here. And Phil is here. Glad you could join us today. Talking about Carney visiting. But there really, again, there isn't that much to say right now because they are actively meeting. So USA Today threw this out just as a bait and click and then talk about everything else because there's nothing to say. Nothing to say. I also thought this was interesting. Ties in with it, and I have to ask, why is this being done? And this still has something to do with Carney's visit. There's a Fox News article coming up. 6 U.S. governors to open talks with Canadian provincial leaders on tariffs. Why? They can't affect anything. They've got nothing to do with it. The governors of 6 northeastern U.S. states have invited the premiers of 6 Canadian provinces to meet in Boston as both sides face the impact of tariffs. President Trump's policy of imposing tariffs on products imported from America's northern neighbor and other nations has sparked controversy both in the U.S. and abroad, mostly because people don't understand what tariffs is, nor do they understand why he did it. And the media is not helping with that. The group of governors includes 5 Democrats. Yeah, no shit. Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey, Maine Governor Janet Mills, New York Governor Kathy Hochul, Connecticut Governor Ned Lamont, and Rhode Island Governor Daniel McKee, and 1 Republican, Vermont Governor Phil Scott. Traitor. No, it doesn't matter. The governors are inviting the premiers of the Canadian provinces of New Brunswick, Newfoundland, depends on your pronunciation, Newfoundland, Newfoundland, and uh, and Labrador, Nova Scotia, Ontario, Prince Edward Island, and Quebec. Healy and Mills press release indicates. While the international uproar over tariffs threatens to upend the economies of our respective communities, we write to reaffirm our friendship and unique interdependence. Ours is a cherished relationship. You never talked to those people before. That is founded not only on mutual financial advantages, that's all you care about, but also on centuries old familial and cultural bonds that supersede politics, except for that part during the War of 1812, I guess. As governors of the Northeast, we want to keep open lines of communication and cooperation and identity avenues to overcome the hardship of these uninvited tariffs and help our economies endure as we continue to navigate this period of great uncertainty. We are committed to preserving cross-border travel, encouraging tourism in our respective jurisdictions, and promoting each other's advantages and amenities. Yeah, you don't. The tourism is ground to a halt because all the tourist attractions are shut down because all of those hotels are full of migrants. We read that article last week. Governors or mayors, especially in Niagara on the Canadian side, tourism is ground to a halt because it's all migrants in the hotels. They're overwhelmed. There's no freaking tourism going on over there. Why don't you deal with that? How about the damn near 300% tariffs that Canada had already been imposing on the United States long before this? Long before this. Phil says he voted for Trump and he's not happy with some of it. He didn't like didn't like the Canada or Greenland stuff. We have enough of our own issues with what we have now. I hope it's just talk. Yeah, he's not going to try to annex Canada. And as far as Greenland, I believe they just wanted to establish a military base there. Country says it's a bunch of leftists and a rhino. Yeah, Monkey says, I don't know if these governors don't know, but they can't act on their own, of course. Look at the Articles of Confederations. That was a disaster document where states practically are independent nations. And JJ suggests it's quite flowery. Will they be giving each other hand jobs too? Good question. Well, some of them are female. But yeah, I get your point. I get your point. But some of the tariffs that again, anywhere up to just over 300%, mostly on dairy products of all things. And that's been in effect for years. We hit them with 25% and they lose their shit. And we're supposed to worry about that? And what do we really import from Canada? Lumber, which we don't need, and maple syrup, which we also kind of don't need because it's produced in New England too. Although a lot of maple syrup gets used, even though it is expensive. Maple syrup's getting up there. It's getting up there. But their tariff list, and I had it written down somewhere. I had a copy of the list. I don't remember what I did with it. I might have a copy on my phone that I can read. Or maybe not. I don't know if I still have it. I can look for it. But their list of long-standing tariffs is insane. What they've been charging the United States for years. Nobody said anything about that. But now Trump is a monster for doing to other countries what they've been doing to us for decades. And Country says, funny how all these countries are coming to the U.S. now to try to work on fair trade. It's starting to work. Could be. Could be. But I mean, that's why he keeps suspending it, because they knuckle under and they ask for concessions. And he's willing to negotiate. I'll give him that. He's willing to negotiate. Here's one that's coming down the pipe. Legend says present and why is Whoopi Goldberg in the thumbnail? She was at the Met Gala. We're going to be talking about that a little bit. She was at the Met Gala. You want to know who are some of the worst, most decadent people out there, celebrity-wise? And I don't just mean like actors and musicians. Politicians can be celebrities too. Go to the Met Gala. You need look no further than that. But before we do that, I wanted to look at this. This is another Fox News article. NIH closes experimentation labs accused of brutally killing thousands of beagles for 40 years. Dog experimentation labs ran for more than 40 years, animal rights advocates say. So the National Institute of Health Director Jay Bhattacharya recently announced on Fox News the agency closed its last in-house beagle laboratory on the NIH campus. The announcement comes just days after the Department of Government Efficiency posted on X they were going to be investigating the funding for those experiments. Oh, I see. So Doge is on the way, and now you want to shut down your labs. Gotcha. A report from the White Coat Waste, or WCW project, detailed the lab's history of allegedly pumping pneumonia-causing bacteria into more than 2,000 beagles, bleeding them out and forcing them into septic shock for deadly experiments. Following the announcement, WCW president and founder Anthony Bellotti praised President Trump for ending the highly scrutinized project. So the Trump administration is the one shutting this down. Taxpayers and pet owners should be forced to pay, or shouldn't, excuse me. Taxpayers and pet owners should not be forced to pay for the NIH's beagle abuse, Bellotti wrote in a statement. We applaud the president for cutting this wasteful NIH spending and will keep fighting until we defund all dog labs at home and abroad. The solution is simple: stop the money to stop the madness. So NIH is not even the ones who shut these labs down. It came from the executive branch after Doge was on its way to investigate how they're spending their money in the first place. Spending their money basically to torture animals. Shortly after the Trump administration took office, the Food and Drug Administration announced in April it would phase out animal testing requirements for antibody therapies and other drugs in favor of testing on materials that mimic human organs, because you know we can't 3D print organs now, which makes you wonder why the hell we still have an organ donor program. Environmental Protection Agency Chief Lee Zeldin also announced his agency would reinstate a 2019 policy from the first Trump administration that phases out animal testing. Trump shut it off the first time. Biden turned it back on. Why? Because Biden don't give a shit about animals. He wants that check. During Trump's first term, the administration closed the government's largest cat laboratory. Bhattacharya said people for the ethical treatment of animals reached out to him following the closure of the beagle testing facility and sent him flowers. Oh, God. Normally, I think NIH directors tend to get physical threats, but they sent me flowers, Bhattacharya said on the air. Yeah, but you only closed it down because Trump told you to, A, and because Doge is on their way to look at your books, B. Funny how that works. Sven says Whoopi is an unfortunate-looking human. Look at her teen photographs from like her modeling days, from when she was like 18, 19 years old. You can't tell that's her. You can't tell that's her. Trump. Sven says Trump saved more animals more animals that fake PETA ever did. Pretty much. JJ said shame on them for harming dogs. Yeah. Again, you know how I feel about that. I don't like seeing animals getting tormented for anything. There's other ways. There's other ways to conduct your experiments. You don't need to torment animals. We should have evolved beyond that by now. We want to pretend to be so civilized, but this is not outside the realm of possibility. This is not outside the realm of possibility to just tear animals to pieces and make them suffer for experiments that aren't even really necessary in most cases. Not even necessary. Conducting experiments that have already been done, I'm sure, for decades. Enough. Enough. It's long since past time to stop. And that's disturbing, actually, that this has already been stopped way back in 2019 during the Trump administration the first time, and that Biden reversed all of those policies. Like I said, I guess he got a nice fat check somewhere. Nice fat check somewhere. It said, oh yeah, I'll sign an order to reverse that. Show me the money. Show me the money, baby. Or how did it go in Death Wish when those guys cornered Paul Kersey in Central Park? Show me the money, honey. Yeah, right. All people suggests, let me see, it's been said donated organs can only come from a living body and never from a corpse. Thus, the donors are still alive when their organs are taken. Yeah, brain dead. And they're no good anyway. I've gone on and on about organ transplants. It's a huge scam worth billions. Most people don't survive the transplant. An organ donor survivor is someone who survives the surgery. Most are not expected to live after the transplant. Look it up. I'm not kidding you here. I've done research on that. I've talked about it a long time ago in a video. I don't know if that video is still up. I think they took it down. But I did the research on it. I mean, it's like better than 50% survival rate. And then with the organ, they don't anticipate you surviving more than 5 to 8 years after the fact. And then you'll drop dead almost immediately if you stop taking your immunity blockers, because you have to take immunity blockers for as long as you live, because your body constantly attacks the organ to try to kill it because it knows it doesn't belong there. Unless you have an identical twin, your body will constantly attack that organ. So you take those immunity blockers and you have a shitty quality of life because you're exhausted and sick and in pain all the time on account of the medications. And you miss doses, you risk total organ failure, whatever it was in the transplant. It's a horrible existence. It's a horrible existence. And again, we're at a stage now where they are able to grow an organ. So they can take cells from you, reproduce an organ, and put it in your body, and it'll be a match because it was your own cells that they produced it with. Why aren't we doing this instead? And then the whole donor thing. I mean, you're giving the organs away and they're profiting from it. And if you have a relative that's on that list, you could bump the list by donating your organ to them for someone else, skipping the line by paying with an organ, trading. You know, and I could go on and on and on. Peter is here. He says, no notification. Of course. Why would there be notifications? Like I said, I did a lot of research on it for a video a few years back. And it's such a horrible system and dishonest. And one of the main reasons I wanted to research it was because of my experience with UPS. I think I've mentioned this before. I'll put that up from all people. That one of the trucks that I used to have to service was getting harvested organs. It was these big foam containers that were cold because they had dry ice packed in them. And they were biohazards. They warned us if any of those containers were ever leaking, we have to sound an alarm for it. We have to evacuate because it's human raw materials in those containers. They're harvested from the local hospitals, transported through UPS to medical colleges for experimentation. So most of the stuff that they carve up out of people, they're just selling it to medical colleges. They don't even saving lives, shall we say. Country said there aren't many that survive a long time, but we had a friend whose son is doing well after 4 years, was 14 when he had a heart transplant. It's true that he has to stay on his meds religiously. And Sven said stem cell organ regrowth, you can get it south of the border. All People says never sign the organ donor line on your driver's license. Some EMTs have been taught to not try as hard to save the organ donors, per a friend who is an EMT. Interesting. That is interesting. But yeah, I know I got on my soapbox about that. It's a tough quality of life if you do live through it, but a lot of people don't. I can understand the person being 14 and surviving because, if you're younger, you're a little more resilient. But yeah, USA Today, we may as well get into the meat of the thumbnail here. Meat of the thumbnail. And Jane has joined us. Hello, Jane. USA Today, guess who? Kamala Harris makes surprise Met Gala debut in a classic black and white gown. Sure. Former Vice President Kamala Harris made her Met Gala debut at this year's annual fashion extravaganza, coinciding with this year's theme of super fine, tailoring, black style. The Democrat donned an asymmetrical classic black and white gown at the ceremony, but did not walk the blue carpet. Yeah, it's called a moon pie. That's what you call a moon pie, okay? Because that's about what it looks like. Let's see if I can freeze that. Damn it. Okay, moon pie, moon pie. Anyway. Synonymous with cream pie, which is probably how she got the job. Oops, sorry about that. The appearance marks a return to the public eye following the November election, where she ran and lost as the Democrat nominee. She was not the Democratic nominee because they did not go through the proper voting process to establish her as being in the position to run. They installed her in that position. On April 30th, she delivered a speech at the Emerge 20th Anniversary Gala in San Francisco, where she condemned the first 100 days of President Trump. Instead of an administration working to advance America's highest ideals, we are witnessing the wholesale abandonment of those ideals. But in the face of crisis, the lesson is don't scatter. The instinct has to be to immediately find each other and to know that the circle will be strong. Things are going to get worse before they get better. Please always remember this country is ours. It doesn't belong to whoever is in the White House. It belongs to you. Unless it's a Democrat president. Then you're screwed. Can I get a double? And no ice this time. Trump, they remind you Trump has not been to the Met Gala for nearly a decade. And it's the Costume Institute benefit, commonly known as the Met Gala, a fundraiser for the museum's Costume Institute, which hosts a collection of 33,000 fashion artifacts. And man, they rake it in. They rake it in to run that museum. And these are some of the really faggy looking people in really faggy looking costumes that attended. Yeah, I'll just cascade through some of these photos. Nothing better than seeing a man with a purse. You remember when Jerry Seinfeld had, it's an Italian leather handbag, my carry-all. Yeah. Yeah, looking real poofy there, guys. Looking real. And I'm going to talk about this a little bit more in a minute. I will be talking about this a little bit more. So all the who's who of people who think that they're more important than you. And LeBron James, of course he's there. I'm surprised he's not wearing a skirt and heels. All the people who think they're more important than you, at least this guy's got a suit on. I don't know who half of these people are. But All the people that do the worst job of actually connecting with real people, all the decadent celebrities. Oh, that's Prince. They're showing older icons now. They're showing people from back in the day. Prince doesn't count. He's deceased. Oh my God. Oh my God. Who's who? The best of the worst, as suggested in the thumbnail. I give you the Met Gala, where, by the way, tickets to the Met are $75,000 each. $75,000 each. And in case you think that I'm kidding, let me show you this. Okay? I'll pull something up. Jane wants to know if I think she's going to run for president again. No, I think they're going to try to run Tim Walz. I mean, he's on campaign now. He's 3 years ahead of schedule. I think they're going to try to dump Kamala Harris on California. Country wants to know if she's trying to play both sides by being black and white. She already was. Met Gala tickets for 2025, 75,000 apiece, plus 350,000 to rent a table. Do they need that much to hang costumes? Something else going on there. Something else is going on there. Okay, Met Gala. $75,000 so that I can put on a really gay-looking outfit and be all pompous and pat myself on the back and look down on everybody. $75,000 a ticket, and 350,000 starting price at the table. It's obscene. To do what? How much does it cost to rent a space to keep costumes on hangers? Because again, that's all it is. That's all the Met Gala is. They preserve costumes from Broadway and whatever. How much does it cost? There's something else going on. It's like money laundering. I don't trust it. Yeah, and Puck of course, Puck says it's a grift. Running for president is big money. She's not a serious candidate. All people say Kamala looks like a drunken mime in the black and white dress. And Tuck says, oh yeah, talking to Jane there. I try to catch up a little bit. All people wants to know if the Met was a black celebration or something. I'm glad you asked because you won't believe this one. I will show you now the theme. The theme of the Met Gala this year was black dandyism. Dandyism, because now, as history is being rewritten, apparently, dandies were started by black people. You know what a dandy is. If you don't, you need to read a Jane Austen novel. If you ever seen any of the period dramas, and you see the really well-dressed guy with the little kerchief in his wrist, and he rides horseback, and he sword fights, and he shoots quail, and he always perfumes himself. He's not necessarily gay, but he's really posh, and he dresses really well, and he speaks very properly, and reads all the best novels, and he knows all of his poetry. That's a dandy. Okay? And it was primarily a UK custom for the most part, and it stuck in the UK, but they changed the terminology from being a dandy to being a teddy boy. Like if you ever watched Are You Being Served? What's his name? Mr. Humphreys was a teddy boy. That's what they were referred to. really properly dressed and dainty acting, because as fruity as he acted, they never actually um, zeroed in on his being gay. There was jokes about it, about him being wet, as they used to call it back in the day, but it's never actually verified. And there are times where he has like a certain friend. It was like, oh, well, you went out on a date with her, and he's like, why wouldn't I? Because he never said he was. But back then, that would be a teddy boy. Same as being a dandy. Same as being a dandy. Jeff says it's a public money laundering operation. As we go to open this next one, that was the subject of the Met Gala, Black Dandyism, which by today's standards translates to effectively further feminizing black men in America. This is USA Today article again. What is black dandyism? What is a zoot suit? Met Gala 2025 theme explained. I didn't see anybody dressed in what looked like a zoot suit. And not only black people wore zoot suits in the 20s and 30s. So that's not fair either. Lots of people dressed that way. It was part of the swing dance movement. Part of the swing dance movement. So Met Gala, which is widely considered the most prestigious fashion event in the world, will pay homage to black menswear and suit tailoring by showing outfits that no one will wear in public. The 2025 Met Gala dress code is, quote, tailored for you. A nod to the museum's super fine tailoring black style Costume Institute exhibit, which will be on public view from May 10th to October 26th. This year's Met Gala theme and dress code are inspired by Monica Miller's 2009 book, Slaves to Fashion, Black Dandyism and the Styling of Black Diasporic Identity. Oh my God. The exhibition will explore the importance of style to the formation of black identities in the Atlantic diaspora, particularly in the United States and Europe, and interpret dandyism as both an aesthetic and socio-political strategy through garments, art, and other objects from the 18th century to the present. Yeah. So we're claiming that now too. Because you've already heard, like, for example, and here's their example of black dandyism. Where did my photo go? It just moved. Hold on a second. Right there. I don't know if that counts. Nash said his dandyism like an old-fashioned nerd. Nah, well, I mean, I suppose, they would be very well educated, very well read, but also with skills, horseback riding, fencing, things like that, competition shooting. That's why sometimes they would get into duels. They were also notorious womanizers. So it's not about, that's why I say you're crossing the line, implying that they were gay. All People says, was Humphrey the gay guy with the white hair on Are You Being Served? Yeah, but they never quite, they implied it, but they never suggested that he was. Never quite said that he was, and he was often seen with a female. Fluke Man has joined us. And Jane says, zoot suit throughout, thought dressy suit to dance in the jute joint or bar. Yes. Yes. So to claim that was specifically black, or that dandyism is specifically black, or no mention of Teddy Boy, and you can look that up, because that would be right in the 50s, 60s, more so genre of London culture, shall we say. Actually, there's an old BBC documentary from I think the early 60s. It's very interesting, that focuses on that. But this looks horrible right here. And you only see celebrities dressed like this in those photos. You only see celebrities dressed that way. But yeah, more, you want to talk about cultural misappropriation. Now apparently dandyism was invented by black people too. I mean, they're already claiming that the original inhabitants of the British Isles were black. I, I mean, I'm sure you've heard that. I think we talked about it a few months ago. Jane wants to know, is dandyism when people dye hair rainbow colors or earrings and ears and noses? I better not be. No. You would be very well dressed. Think Leon Redbone would be a dandy. Look up Leon Redbone. He was a singer. I actually like Leon Redbone. He's deceased now. He's deceased now. And that all people talking about the film Swing Kids. Yeah, take a look at that. You'll see what he's talking about, or what, a good example of zoot suits, I believe. Says zoot suits. Oh, lost it. Zoot suit characterized by high-waisted draped pants and oversized jackets with exaggerated shoulders and large lapels. Zoot suits gained popularity during the Harlem Renaissance, a cultural, artistic, and literary movement within the black community that emerged in the early 20th century with a pivotal time, and was a pivotal time for black dandyism. Again, I don't know if they started wearing them first, but they're not the only ones to wear those types of clothing. They're not the ones. And all people says were the dandies like the guys from the film Amadeus. That's pre-dandy period, but yeah, it's along the same line. That's along the same line. That's why I suggested watching like a Jane Austen film. Or if you've ever read the book, I think everything that Jane Austen ever did was turned into, or every novel she ever wrote was turned into a movie, or at least a miniseries. The miniseries are better. BBC did some great ones, actually, like Sense and Sensibilities and things like that. And you see those guys, but they were also often portrayed as being severe womanizers and gamblers, and often in debt. Often in debt. But enough already. Enough already. These people. These people. Incredible. The best. Oh, and also Kamala Harris panned for her word salads. She's getting a lot of criticism for the word salads, going on and on, or droning on at the Met Gala in her interview with Vogue magazine about how art affects politics. It's hard to stomach. I didn't read the quote. I didn't read the quote. But you can well imagine. You can well imagine. You want to see a good example of zoot suits? Watch the film 1941 by Steven Spielberg. Because there's a group of guys, swing dancers in zoot suits, but I believe they're all Hispanic in that film. I believe they're all Hispanic. As we get ready to jump into this, going to go to an NBC News article. NBC News article. A Mississippi man spent 940 days in jail waiting for a trial that never came. This guy right here, Sinatra Jordan. Sinatra Jordan. 940 days in jail, no trial. So much for your right to a speedy trial. Sinatra Jordan, and this is in Mississippi, stepped out of the glass doors at the Raymond Detention Center and headed towards his father's waiting car. It had been 940 days, and he wasn't going to linger. Jordan, who was 32, was dressed in the same blue t-shirt and dark denim shorts he'd been wearing when he was brought to jail on August 15th, 2020, accused of starting a car chase and firing at police. Jordan insisted that he was not armed. He said officers had shot into his car. A bullet also struck his friend that was in the passenger seat, who was a female, a mother of 5, who was seriously wounded in the incident. Months passed, no trial, no hearing, no updates, and rare interactions with lawyers. There were many times alone and despairing in jail when he wondered if anyone was listening. Well, he had court-appointed attorney, and that's just bullshit anyway. Then in an extraordinary turn, the blame shifted to the officers, and the bulk of the case against Jordan was dropped, and then he was set free. Basically, the reason he was set free, even though the police did chase his car, it turned out there was no gun. So they chased his car and fired at his car, and they had no provocation to do so. So they determined it was best to just cut the case loose. In the meantime, this guy sat in jail 940 days. That's like what, 2.5 years? 2.5 years waiting even just for a hearing. Waiting for a hearing. And people wonder why I don't trust the justice system. Can you imagine? Raccoon invokes Tom and Jerry. Remember when Tom and Jerry tore up the curtains to make zoot suits to impress the white cat? I do remember that. I do remember that. Oh, no. Tom and Jerry was awesome. So, and that's really why I'm reading this story. And not only that, but because he was not technically sentenced or in jail, okay? He was not sentenced or in jail. He was being held pending trial. I don't think that he can sue for wrongful imprisonment. Because again, if I was arrested and went to court and sentenced and thrown in jail, and I sat there for 2.5 years, and then they realized I was innocent and let me go, I'm entitled. They owe me. And you can take the state to court and you can get something for it. And I believe in most states, the rule of thumb is $100,000 a year for every year of unlawful incarceration. And I could be wrong, but I think that because he was being held and didn't even get as far as a hearing, that he's not entitled. If anybody's an attorney and they're no better than me, please chime in. Because that's a gross miscarriage of justice. You want to talk about gross miscarriages of justice? This is it. 2.5 years of his life. Shouldn't have been running from police, but neither should they have been firing into his vehicle. Thanks for putting that out, all people. He said the majority of those arrested in the Zoot Suit riots were of Hispanic, largely Mexican origin. Incredible. And Jane said there was a married man. Did you hear about a man married to 3 different pretty women in Florida State? How did the courthouse let this happen? Married in 2019, 2020, and 2023. I did not hear about that. Peter suggests he should be paid $1 million for every year in prison. Usually it's 100,000. Usually it's 100,000. If you can even get it, because a lot of states try to deny it, and you have to take that state to court and sue them for it, which the judge usually sides with the victim. but then the state still doesn't pay, and then they have to go back to court to enforce the payment. And what sucks about that, again, of course, is that's tax money. Who's paying for that really? It's the taxpayers. All people wants to know what the charges were. As far as I know, I believe it was just evading capture, resisting arrest, and reckless endangerment. And there might have been a charge for the shooting. I don't remember, but again, it's been discovery. There was no gun. There was no gun. So they had to throw it. It's a dead case. If they go to court, they're going to lose bad. They're going to lose bad because they had no right to fire into the vehicle. And again, a woman was critically injured. He was critically injured, or she was critically injured. She survived, but she was critically injured. Mother of 5. As we move around here, Peter says, if not false imprisonment, then it's kidnapping. Yeah, it should be. You should be able to call it that. You should be able to call it that. And JJ said the man still lost 2.5 years of his life. Where's the justice? Where indeed? How many times have I done a video talking about that? What freaking justice? You can't convince me. What justice? What freaking justice? As we shift gears here, and this is SF Gate, or San Francisco Gate, local story from California. I just thought this was funny because of the irony in this story. California pot industry gets worst possible tax news because you know it's legal. It says California beleaguered pot industry was given another piece of bad news Thursday afternoon. The state's cannabis tax rate will increase from 15% to 19%, which is the highest allowed by law. And that was July 1st of this year. So you'll pay 19% tax on your doobies on top of sales tax and whatever else you got to pay. The 26% change devised by Governor Gavin Newsom is ironically being made precisely because of the state's legal industry is floundering while the illicit market thrives. Representatives with the California Department of Tax and Free Administration announced the gross receipts tax hike during a cannabis advisory meeting Thursday. State law requires the department to increase the pot tax rate this year if cannabis excise revenue falls. So basically, they're raising the tax because they're not making as much money from sales tax, from marijuana sales that they think they should be getting. But the reason that sales are down is because it's cheaper to buy the shit off the street than it is to get it legally because of the tax. So they've raised the tax and killed their market. And their solution? Raise the tax again. How's that for irony? Raise the tax again. Enforced by Governor Newsom. His idea. Bad enough. I mean, you're already paying sales tax. That should have been enough. Oh no, we're going to impose 15% on top of that, which drove the price of legal marijuana over street value. So people just buy it off the street. What are you going to do? People would rather buy it off the street. Once people smoke it, you don't know where the hell it came from. And what do? Well, we killed the market by making taxes too high. Let's raise them again. Let's raise those taxes again. It's amazing. Like every story I read about California, they're shooting themselves in the foot. It's like the people who are running California have no idea how anything works. No freaking idea how anything works. And what do you think's going to happen when that 19% drives the price up even further? Even fewer people are going to buy it legally. Why would they? Why would you do it? Why would you bother? There you go. Sven says, I bet that will harsh their buzz. Yeah, indeed. You're killing the market. You're killing the market. You're driving people away from it. You legalized it so you could fleece them in the first place. And then you set yourself up for disaster by creating a projection of how much you think the revenue ought to be. And didn't hit the mark and then raised the prices, raised the taxes. That's how you got to 15% in the first place. It's not the first time. You can't project how much the market's going to earn. You legalized it, just let it go and take what you get. And quit interfering with the market, quit manipulating it. Nature Nerd suggests that less people buy cigarettes because of high taxes. No, they've gone to vaping. Because I know less people smoke cigarettes now, but those people, they all vape now. It's become the official alternative to cigarettes, even though the vaping is worse. JJ says they'll drive the market back underground. Yeah, it already is. It already is underground. They're already ruining it. They've already ruined their market. Peter says taxation is theft. It's extortion. It's extortion. Taxation is extortion. Which is a type of theft, but I like to itemize. I want to put it in a box. I want to put it in a box. It's easier for people to comprehend when you can tell them exactly how they're being screwed over. But again, it's just incredible to me that every time I read a story about California, it's corruption, it's bad policy. It doesn't make any sense. Flukeman says buying, selling resources, tax expenses, and etc. These are all taught in schools. Kind of. Not very efficiently, if anyone's even paying attention. And again, it's just done for more state revenue. It's called, back in the day, they used to call it a sin tax, which is why alcohol was legalized. Because remember, there was prohibition at one point. And with a few exceptions, Al Capone comes to mind because he's the most famous. It was working primarily. Prohibition was working, but government needed the money. So they said, okay, we'll bring it back and we'll just tax the shit out of it. That's what we'll do. And now people are just used to it. But hey, let's take a look at the debt clock. We'll look at, the U.S. debt clock and take a look at the Doge with projections currently at $400 billion in savings. That's not bad for the first 100 or so days. 400 billion in projected savings. That's $3,564 per taxpayer less that we would be held accountable for ultimately. I want to see that continue to build, despite what some people say in the comments. I get comments. You'd be surprised. I get so many weird comments I'm like that close to another viewer mail video. There's some crazy stuff people have been saying to me. Anyways, with that, we are at the top of the hour. Speaking of taxes, because Peter mentioned Santa Monica here, I'll put that up. And he also suggests auditing the Pentagon. Doge is already starting to dig its claws into the Pentagon. Actually, they've been complaining about a lot of stuff there. Speaking of taxes, on our yearly property taxes, they've just raised the school tax damn near another $600 this year. For what? For what? A failure system, one of the worst school systems in the nation, and I already hate public school as it is. Anyways, once again, you are listening to and or watching Coffee Talk, and you can find the live portion Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on YouTube on Coffee Talk and Prepper University. You can find me on X at Coffee Talk Chat. You can find me on fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta. So thank you, everybody, for joining us here today. As always, hope you got something out of the conversation. Oh, and I put an independent video up today on both channels. I don't know if anybody got a notification for that, but I'll just tell you, go ahead and look for it if you don't mind. So again, hope you got something out of the conversation, and we will catch you again tomorrow.